welcome to GradMissions Office Hours. We're doing a special LSAT-focused episode, and I have Ben Parker from Hey Future Lawyer here. Hi, Ben.
Hey Autumn, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So I originally invited you on the pod because you all have created this beautiful new tool that takes the horrible layout of the ABA 509 report that you have to click into every school's individual website to see. And you all built this beautiful product where you brought it together. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, so the backstory to it is that I, as you probably do, often have to send our clients to look at the data that the ABA requires schools to put out so that they can make better informed law school decisions. But the nasty thing about this is you also have to basically attach an educational course in how to even read these forms with it because they're
Yep.
so nasty. And while the data is there, to actually translate that into actionable insights is rather difficult. Like you can look at their scholarship matrices or potentially their tuition and all this stuff, and it's there technically, but it's really hard to read. So I would constantly be referring to these reports, and people would be like, I don't know how to read them. So we basically just wanted to transform the data into easier to read formats. And we also went to the ABA employment reports just to look at like where
Mm.
people end up. Schools are rather different in terms of where their graduates end up. Not to say any school is like not worth attending, but if you want to be working at a federal clerkship and you go to a very low ranked school, your odds are very low. So we just wanted to display that data so that people could make better informed decisions.
Yeah. Well, the layout is beautiful, just like everything else on your site. It's so intentional. It hits all the dopamine places that I needed to hit. And I'm just thankful to have a one-stop oracle. And I think it's such a good representation of just the bang up job that your team does. So will you talk our audience through just a little bit your approach to LSAT prep? Because the way I found you was because I kept having clients come and they were having dramatic increases, and time again, Hey Future Lawyer is where they were getting that increase from. And so I'm just want to peek under the hood a little bit and learn how you build the system and what you all do over there.
Yeah, so we really built LSAT prep from a results first standpoint of like what works, which is tricky because what works is often not fun. Like if you're listening and you want to do LSAT prep, whether or not you work with us, it really just comes down to are you doing questions and are you reviewing them properly, which
Mm.
is not as fun as like reading a textbook because you can just like take your notes and be like, oh, I'm making progress. And yet people will do that and really not make progress because it's like learning how to shoot a basketball by reading about how to shoot a basketball. You actually have to go to the court and just start shooting. And sure, like your form matters and you should be like doing it properly, which is where review comes in. But we really are practice oriented. So it's all about just like getting repetition. As far as the actual like form and how it's done, we also focus a lot more on the LSAT being a reading test than a logic test. The LSAT prep industry has come to the conclusion that I strongly disagree with, that the LSAT is a test of like wizard tools and logic and like contrapositives. And what we find is that there's no logic on the LSAT that a smart seventh grader wouldn't be expected to understand, but
Hot
they hide
take,
it.
Ben. You're gonna
Yeah,
make people mad with that one.
I got in a Reddit fight 2 days ago, which like I'm the idiot for doing that. But people are very well, part of it becomes an identity. Like I'm good at the LSAT, therefore I'm good at logic. And when I say, well, no, like, or conversely, you're bad at the LSAT, you're not bad at logic, you're bad at reading. People hate that because everyone thinks they're a good reader despite what like our studies on literacy show about our nation's skills. And it is hard.
Mm.
It's not like you're illiterate if you can't do the LSAT. It's that it's very dense prose, just like lawyers are expected to unwind. And that's what they're seeing. Like, can you unwind it? So often the arguments boil down to something really stupid, like for example, the most common LSAT flaw is confusing necessary versus sufficient. And I always tell people that like third graders understand this. And to like give an example, like a sufficient condition is if I go to the grocery store, I will spend money. And then they'll confuse that for a necessary condition and say Ben spent money today, therefore he went to the grocery store. At which point
Mm.
people paying attention will go like, what if Ben went on Amazon or DoorDash or just like any of the million ways to spend money? And yet that's taught. There's one course who I think spends 20 hours on that, which I find offensive because
20 hours?
we just did it in 20 seconds. Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
and because it sells better, and that's the incentives we've learned is that telling people what they need to do is actually not fun because like saying, hey, you're going to do questions today for an hour, you're probably going to get some wrong and feel stupid, and then guess what you're going to do tomorrow? You're going to do that again, and you're going to do that for like 6 months, and then you get your good LSAT score. The reality is, a lot of people want the comfort more than they want a high outcome, and that's what we've really ran into. But there's enough of you that do want high outcomes that we are able to stay in business quite well, so we just cater to those people.
That's right. It's like ab work. Like if you want to have a six pack, you just at the end of the day have to do the hard work every single day and get it done. You have to control what goes in. There's a lot of factors at play. And I think you're exactly right. In anything worth doing, you're going to have to get in and do the hard work. Um, Tell me what you're seeing volume wise, because as you know, we've been in unprecedented times last cycle. We're in unprecedented times this cycle when it comes to numbers of people taking the LSAT and applying to law school.
Yeah, so just to kind of peel the curtain back for people listening, in the LSAT world, we see seasonality. The kind of biggest time is the summer. Everyone's like out of school and admissions is coming up. So they're like, oh, like I'm gonna start prepping. But so right now we kind of see a little bit of a start with the new year. And in fact, it is funnily enough when people should be starting in an optimal world.
Yes.
Although that's not
Yes.
really what we see. We tend to see most people start in like March, April, which is unfortunate, but that is typically when we start to see it start to like begin to ramp up. So it's I mean, it's also hard to know how much of this is year versus like we've built a lot better of a product. So like
Sure.
we are seeing build up this year, but like our traffic's way up this year. And so it's hard to like attribute like what's the causal thing here. Is it because the cycle is picking up, or is it because we just have more traffic? I don't know. But what I am seeing is the number of first-time test takers on LSAC data is starting to peel back. So what that tells me is, well, a lot of people are still retaking the LSAT for potentially people that like tried to go this cycle but didn't quite get it done. The input of new people into the system seems to be slowing. My read of that is that in a year or two, that means admissions may taper off. I mean, maybe not like 2019 levels, but compared to like 2025, I don't think it'll be as intense. But that's me really going out there on a limb.
Yeah. Well, but we have to look at the tea leaves and we have to kind of read the data. We've definitely seen these cycles change. They shift with political winds, they shift with recession indicators, they shift with, funding availability. And so if someone were to say to you, should I wait a year to go to law school? Because you think it's going to be less competitive in a year or two, what are you saying?
I mean, my advice is always don't make your decisions based on like the circumstances, make your decisions based on your life. So, I mean,
That's
if
so
someone was
good.
talking to me now, I mean, I would tell them you're waiting, but not because it's like too late for, or not because this is a bad cycle, but because you're talking to me in January. You're like, what are you doing? It's too late.
It's too
Um,
late.
so if someone wanted to apply next cycle, so it's January to like prep for the LSAT, I'd say it takes the median person like 4 to 6 months. So you can get ready by June, have a backup in August/September, and apply relatively early. But like that's not a ton of time. It's not like we have the abundance that people tend to perceive at this point. I mean, it's the fight I make every year, which is I tell people in January, hey, start now. And everyone's like, this is
Yes.
fear mongering. You're just capitalizing on that. It's like, no, I genuinely mean that like you need to start now, or I'll be talking to you in July and telling you that like you fucked up. Sorry for the editor for that. But anyway, so like I would say like, it depends on your life. Like if applying this year means you apply with the 155 when you could apply next year with the 165, I'd say wait, but not because next year will be easier, but because your outcomes are going to be so much better.
That's right. You've hit on so many important things that I could circle back to. But your point about literacy and about if you're not a strong reader, that the LSAT's not going to go well for you, even if you memorize every question type, which I know you all don't do, and overcomplicate it, and you kind of hold your tongue just right to get this answer. At the end of the day, if you're a strong reader, you're going to be able to take the LSAT. So do you advise any kind of like literacy work that people do to get ready for the LSAT, or how do you encourage them beyond just saying like you're not a good reader?
Yeah, I mean, it is difficult to deliver to tell someone like, hey, if you're missing questions, that's because you can't read, because like that doesn't come off well to people. But that is kind of what I do. It's a lot of modeling in what we do. So the real value of LSAT prep is just showing people what we do. So like I will demonstrate a question, and a lot of that is just we actually have what we call the Hey Future Lawyer 3 questions, which we joke about because like a lot of LSAT prep has their trademark stupid terms, and we think that's ridiculous. But we say it kind of tongue in cheek, but it is true, which is when you read a sentence like, what did they say? Which sounds redundant, but so often the eyes are glazing over and they've like sub-vocalized the words, but they haven't actually translated that to the meaning behind it. And
Mm.
then second, like, what do you think? Like, do you have an opinion on what they just said? Because the at least logical reasoning section of the LSAT, it's so argumentative that you should be engaging with the passage. And then finally, where are they going with this? Like, what possibly could they branch off of? Like, if I say something
Mm.
about I had to get a new microphone, which I did because people were complaining about the audio quality. Maybe that's like, therefore, Ben's podcast is getting better, or like the class recording sound. Like, what can build off of that fact? And if you can't build off
Mm.
of it, that means you just don't understand. So that's the actionable advice we give, because I think occasionally we get kind of strawmanned by the logic LSAT prep. I was like, oh, they just say read better, which is not actionable. Like, we really do, for one, demonstrate it, and then two, kind of process it. Although I do tell people by the time you take the LSAT, you should not be going like step one, what did they say? Step two, what do you think? It should be subconscious.
It's like muscle memory by that point if you've
Yeah,
done
well,
it
it's also
right.
tricky because like a lot of people come in with this skill. Like when someone has a diagnostic of a 157, it's because they already do this. And when someone has a diagnostic of a 137, it's because they're not doing this. And yet,
Mm.
then when you throw like question types at them, you're not. you're throwing band-aids on a gaping wound that this person like is not engaging. And theoretically, they now know that like weaker answers are easier to prove on a must be true, but like that's not their problem. Their problem is they're not reading. So, um, yeah, and then I tell people to read. Like I'll be honest, I don't read that much. I probably read like 10 books a year, which is probably pretty high in terms of like the American distribution. But to me, it doesn't
Right.
feel like that much. And that's pretty common when I talk to people. They're like, I don't read either. I'm like, yeah, start doing that. Because like this is a muscle. The more like I do reading every day because I do the LSAT. So my muscles stay strong in that sense. But if you don't use it, it will atrophy. And I think that's what we're running
Yes.
into.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. So, build for me the ideal lead up to taking the LSAT. And I have this weird sort of thing about the June LSAT. I think it's cursed. I just feel like anecdotally, especially if you're still an undergrad and you think I'm going to study and then take, I'll kind of brush up and intensive after I graduate. You have like 2 weeks before the June LSAT. It's an illusion. If you actually practice, like I love a June LSAT, but if you were to build like the optimal timeline, what would that look like?
Yeah, so I think the way I did it when I was an undergrad was pretty good. I started studying when I was a sophomore, which is pretty
Yes.
early, but there was just no pressure. I also studied for those of you listening. I'm 26, so I was in the COVID semester when everything shut down, and my school got ridiculously easy. So I had all this time, and also there was like obviously nothing going on. So I just like did LSAT a little bit, not super consistently, but I had a bunch of. This was actually back in the day when you had to buy the old books from LSAC. I think it was even before Law Hub, or it was right as Law Hub was becoming a thing, which is their online
Okay.
software. So I had these like books. I would just sit down, do a section, and review my mistakes. And there really wasn't a lot to it beyond that. Definitely not the most optimal. It probably took me longer than it would have if I had put some thought into it, but it worked because I actually did the questions as opposed to getting bogged down. So that's what was great about that is if I missed a week, it didn't like mess up my life plan because I could just
Sure.
pick up the next week and it's not like I lost valuable time. So by the time I ended up taking it in October of my junior year, I was still really early. Like I wouldn't even have been applying to law school until the following September, 11 months later. So that's like the optimal plan, which is get it done when you're super early. That's probably past. Like you probably are not listening that early, but in that sense, what you have to do is like basically start now is what it comes down to. Um, if you were applying, let's say for the fall 2027 cycle, now really is when I would start studying because if you don't give
Mhm.
yourself like a 4 to 5 month runway, you're just not maximizing your score, which is insane given the consequences it will have for you in terms of the schools you're admitted to and your career. And then, yeah, I mean, what it really comes down to is like you also want to have multiple shots. The LSAT has variation on any day. You can have a good day or a bad day, which means if you're averaging a 165, if you have a bad day because you only took the LSAT once, you could score 162 versus having a good day, you could score 169. These are night and day outcomes when it comes to your admissions
Yes, they
outcomes.
are.
So
And your scholarship.
so I always tell people to budget more than one take, not because like you're like randomly shooting, but because randomness is inherent to the process and you can't escape that. Like I have randomness. If I take the LSAT and I'm poorly slept and like get a really bad reading comp passage that does not click with me, I can miss 4 questions and now I'm scoring like a 175 as opposed to a 180. And like that can happen for a professional LSAT dork. So like it's this is a real thing. And on top of that, I did want to touch on the June point because you make about it being cursed. I think you actually got to what I thought the causal mechanism was kind of the I'd say delusional optimism of people that are
Yes.
done with school. And they're like, oh, I'll study. Like, when does school end for most people? Like early May. And that gives them what? Like all of 4 weeks to study. So, because I find the June LSAT to be a great first starting point, but with the caveat that you're starting studying now in like January into the build up.
Yes.
But also, I guess in practice, that's not actually what occurs for most studiers. They tend to like, kind of do it just a few weeks and then who's surprised when
Right.
they only go up 5 points from their diagnostic?
That's right. Exactly. And I loved what you said to have the August as a backup, right? Because you don't want that to be your first take for sure, because
Mhm.
apps open September. And, the story that we preach over here at God Missions is you need to be applying in September. We already, so if you're new to this process, which I know we have some new listeners, so if you want to start law school in the fall of 2027, your application opens in September of 2026. And the deadline may start, say March 15th, but Ben and I both know that if you're applying much past, honestly, Thanksgiving, in
Yeah.
cycles like these, you are really shooting yourself in the foot when it comes to not just seats in the class, but definitely in scholarship opportunity.
Yeah, that's a cutoff I tend to, well, I always tell people like for best results apply in September.
Mhm.
But that people will often push back against that and be like, oh, well, I'm not quite ready. And it kind of becomes a slippery slope where like, if you give a little bit, they take a mile. And next thing you know, people are applying in like actual January, which has real cost. The other thing is the incentives. Like you guys will probably hear that this doesn't matter elsewhere. There's a lot of incentives to, I'd say, spin the truth about this. Law schools want your application all the way through the cycle, so they're incentivized to downplay it. Admissions consultants, not like Autumn, who's ethical, but unethical ones, they want clients late in the cycle, so they will tell you it's fine. LSAT
Mhm.
tutors, I mean, I tell people that will reach out to me like, hey, studying a month for February is not optimal. And like I just lost a few $100 because that person
Mhm.
typically doesn't have a positive association with us. But it's true. So, but the thing is, there are people that will take the easy money in front of them by saying it is fine. And a lot of people end up listening to those people because they tell you what you want to hear, which is you can pull it off. That doesn't make it true. It just means their
Yep.
incentives are aligned with not telling you the truth. So, um, yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. That's the other thing that I love about your message is you don't downplay the importance of GPA. And that's something that you and I both deal a lot with as splitters, people who have, a below median GPA and they know they've got their work cut out for them with the LSAT. No one's going to make money off of your GPA. And so a lot of LSAT companies will kind of downplay, oh, schools don't really pay attention to that, get your LSAT where it needs to be. That's not true. Like your number one boo when you're an undergrad needs to be your GPA. It doesn't matter what your major is. Pick the major that's going to let you go to class, do the best. If you've had a rocky start, you need that upward trajectory. And so I think the ethics around getting your GPA in place first. So when you said start studying for the LSAT in September, sorry, in your sophomore year, would you
Yeah.
have people sign up for Hey Future Lawyer in their sophomore year? Do you
Um,
think it's too early?
Well, that introduces a pretty big caveat, which is like Autumn just said, if your GPA is not where it needs to be and you are sacrificing GPA points or LSAT points, you are making a very poor trade because your GPA is forever. And once you lock, like the LSAT's always waiting for you, it's not going away, despite what some goofballs may hope for. I mean, maybe it goes away and it's replaced by another standardized test, but they need some way to evaluate you. So the testing is never leaving. Anyway, back to the point, which is that would someone sign up as a sophomore? Like if they're getting an actual 4.0 and they can balance it, then sure, or maybe study over the summer. But if there's some kid getting like a 3.2 and they want to start their LSAT prep early, that is the dumbest thing that they could do. They need to focus on fixing their grades going forward and making sure that they never get even an A minus on their transcript. And if they are sacrificing one A to an A minus to study for the LSAT, I think they're making an unwise trade that will, in the long run, hurt them. Because, like you just said, the GPA matters a ton. I would argue they're basically equivalent. I think some people have said like the LSAT matters like 7 times as much, which is just not true. Um, I find it's the most you can pull the lever because if you're done with your GPA, it's locked in. You can't change it. But the LSAT you always can change. But while your GPA is still amendable, you really should be doing the best to get it as high as possible.
That's exactly right. What do the most successful students prepping for the LSAT do?
Yeah, so I boil it down to two things. The first off is doing questions. That's the you'd think apparent one because you would think like how do you prep for a test? Well, you like do it, but yet people don't. In fact, we've kind of wanted to amend. We're not gonna do this because it's a hassle to like rebrand everything, but like amending LSAT studying to LSAT practice. So like we're practicing, we're not
Mhm.
studying because studying has the connotation of like whiteboards and flashcards and all that nonsense.
Content review.
Yeah, I'm on LSAT TikTok because I'm poor at like managing my time. And for every LSAT TikTok I see of like day in the life of studying with me, maybe out of 10 of them, one of them is actual studying and nine of them are people doing performative studying. And it's like, yeah, no wonder you guys don't end up in like the 155s. It's because you don't study. You guys think you
Mhm.
do, but you're like writing fancy notes. They have their like highlighters out and it's just like understand the questions in front of you. Do it again. And it's not sexy, but it works.
And
So
they're probably also the pre-law club president, which
yeah,
law schools don't care about either, by the way.
yeah, and it's funny though because often you see this very performative studying, and then people get mad because I'll tell. Like I had an Instagram comment where I told people that your textbooks don't count as studying. I always call them the appetizer. Like if you need an appetizer to also prep to get comfortable, you can like kind of dip your toes in with a book or a course, a video course. I mean, but the actual work is just doing questions and reviewing them. So that's the first one. And then the second one's consistency, which in the abstract sounds easy. Like I'm gonna do an hour a day. That sounds so simple, and yet to actually follow through on that is it requires sacrifice in your life. So you have to figure that out. But if you don't do it, like when you study, oh, I studied, I don't know, for 3 months every other day, it's not good enough. And so when you're surprised with your outcome, it's like, well, yeah, that's why you didn't get there because you didn't put the work in. And it's not meant to be unfeeling, but it's a pretty simple formula, which is do questions, do them every day. 6 months later, you're going to have like a 170. It's there's really not that many exceptions.
I love that equation. Do the hard work, work with you, and you're going to get this. You guys have a 165 plus guarantee. Is that right?
Yeah, we're working on it. The coding is the bottleneck there because I mean, there's a lot of else.
We can edit this out if you want me to. I thought that
No,
was
no,
the
it's
thing.
fine. You can
Okay.
have it. It's not live yet, but it should be live. I mean, I don't want to like timeline it, just because development is nasty. I'd probably say like mid-February is when it will be rolled out, but we don't know for sure. I mean, we could maybe back end set it up for you, but I don't know. Anyway, the point is that with this guarantee, what we've noticed is people that take certain action just get the results. And so we're, putting our money where our mouth is. There's a lot of LSAT guarantees that are kind of nonsense where it's like, hey, if you don't get this, you can continue like the tutoring that didn't work, which I find funny. Or there's one where if you do 96 hours of tutoring, they give you 2 hours of tutoring if you don't get your goal score, which is like, what are the next 2 hours? Yeah, I'll tell you who it is after. But it's funny. And so it's very simple. And as such, we just want to convey that to the customer. I mean, the caveat to this is you have to do the work. If you sign up, we're not guaranteeing you 165. Like you actually have to show up, do questions, review them. And
And you can track that.
yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about having your own websites. Like we're going to have a dashboard with like, hey, are you on track? And I think what we're going to find is that a lot of people are not going to get their 165, but we'll be able to point them to like, hey, here's why you didn't get a 165, you goofball. It's because you didn't like log in. So as the listener, what you can extrapolate from this is like, I'm not guaranteeing you 165. No one can do that. What I can guarantee you is the path, and then you have to like walk the path, which is
Yes.
like admittedly something you have to do. And I will also note whether or not you work with us, like I think you should. I think we're the best LSAT prep on the internet. But even if you do prep elsewhere, it's simple. You have to do questions and review them. And if you do that, it will go fairly well. And if you don't, you're probably not going to improve very much. And it's why people will study. I mean, it's crazy. I'll hear from people that have a diagnostic in the 160s and end in like the high 160s. I'm like, how is that possible? We tend to get someone in the 160s to like 175 in like a month, which I know sounds absurd, but it's because they have such I don't have to really teach them anything. I just have to get them to practice. And then once they practice, they figure it out. And sure, there's a few nuances where I explain a question to them, like maybe 5 or 10. And they're like, oh, I get it. I get what they're looking for. This is easy. So yeah, don't make the LSAT hard. Like the LSAT is a test of reading. It's simple. It is difficult, but you can also make it harder than it is by introducing all this logic nonsense or knowledge. And it really is just a test of how you read and can you deduce the information on the page.
Oh my gosh. Ben, you're such a wealth of knowledge. I love your approach. I send people to you all the time. If you are listening to this podcast and you're interested in working with Ben, if you email me, I'll send you a promo code. I don't want to like say it because you're going to put this on your episode too. And if you are listening to this episode on Ben's feed and want to know more about building a successful application, you can book a free app strategy call with me and we can talk through how to build your application. Thanks so much for being here, Ben.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Bye, y'all.